Australia named 8 separate species of its largest marsupial. Then somebody counted 1,000 teeth and worked out they were all the same animal. The big ones were just the males. For about 2 million years, this continent had one specialty. It built giants. Not one lineage getting big. Marsupials, reptiles and birds, all swelling independently at the same time, like the place had a policy. Then, almost overnight, it stopped. That's the story you've heard. Here's the rest of it. One of these giants had an elbow that barely opened at all. Not injured. Built that way. And when scientists went looking for who laid the enormous eggs the first Australians were cooking, the DNA was gone. Cooked out of the shell by the climate. Every time anyone looks closer, it gets stranger, not clearer. Right? Let's run it. If you want to see more extinct things drop where they don't belong, you know the drill. Tonight, you don't get one body. You get several, and everyone is an argument that hasn't finished. Start here. You're a Diprotodon, and you are the largest marsupial that has ever existed. Somewhere between 2 and nearly 3 tons, depending on which set of bones anyone measures and which method they trust. Around 2 meters at the shoulder. 3 to 4 meters nose to tail. If you want a shape for it, think rhinoceros. If you want a relative, think wombat. That's the nearest thing to you still walking around. A wombat scaled up until the scaling stopped making sense. Nothing in this landscape is in a position to argue with you. Which, out here, is rarer than it sounds. You are not alone, either. You move in a small group. There are big ones and small ones, and the difference between them is not age. You're one of the big ones, which almost certainly means male. Nobody out here finds that remarkable, except the people who dig you up much later and spend a very long time arguing about what they're looking at. And you move. That's the part nobody expected. You are not wandering. You're doing a circuit. The same circuit, year after year, out and back, following where the rain lands and where the green comes up. Somewhere on the order of 200 kilometers a year, out and home again, on a schedule you never chose and never think about. Your front teeth grow continuously for your entire life. They never stop. And as they grow, they take in the water you drink and the ground you drink it from, laying the chemistry down in layers. Which means the whole route is being written into your face while you walk it. You don't know that. You know grass. You know water. You know the smell of the herd and the specific irritation of a smaller male standing where he shouldn't. Then one day you stop walking and the ground takes you, and about 300,000 years pass. And a very long time after that, someone drills a series of tiny holes along that one front tooth, reads the layers off it like tree rings, and works out exactly where you were standing in every season of your life, which, out here, barely rates. There's stranger to come. Field note, that animal was 8 species. The fossils came in 2 clear size classes, and the obvious reading was that the big ones and the small ones were different creatures. Then a study published in 2008 went through more than 1,000 teeth from sites across 4 states and found no real basis for splitting them. 1 species. Extremely strong sexual dimorphism. The large form almost certainly male, the small form almost certainly female. 7 names deleted in a single paper. The animal didn't change. What we thought we were looking at did. The migration evidence comes from 1 tooth, from 1 individual, from 1 region. It's a beautiful result. It is not yet the whole species. Now be something else. You're a Palaeontology, and you are a problem. Around a ton for the largest of your kind. Heavier than every reconstruction drawn of you before 2019. Your nasal bone sits strangely far back in the skull, which is why some paleontologists give you a short trunk like a tapir, and others look at the same bones and say almost certainly not. That argument is still running. You are not consulted. Your forelimbs are enormous, ending in big flattened claws, and you use them to tear a shrub out of the ground or strip bark off a tree. And your elbow barely opens, not stiff, not arthritic. Structurally near fixed, in a way found in no other mammal. None living, none extinct, nothing else in your own family. So you hold your arms sprawled wide, permanently bent, And you walk like that, and whatever movement that joint has left goes into each stride. To reach higher brows, you may well rear up on your hind legs and feed standing. Nothing alive moves the way you move. There is nothing on Earth today anyone can point at and say, like that. Now be a Procoptodon, around 240 kilograms. Somewhere around 2 meters standing, possibly closer to 2.5. You're the largest kangaroo that has ever lived, close to 3 times the biggest one hopping around Australia now. And here is the interesting part. Nobody can agree on how you get around. Just over 10 years ago, a study compared limb bones across 140 kangaroo species and concluded your anatomy isn't built for hopping. Above about 160 kilos, the tendon safety margins fall through the floor. So you'd walk, upright, 1 foot in front of the other, the way a person does, which no kangaroo alive can manage. Then, this year, another study pushed straight back. Even marsupials over 200 kilos, it argued, were not too heavy to hop. And animals like you probably had a mixed repertoire. Hopping, bipedal walking, down on all fours when it suited. So the single most basic question about the largest kangaroo of all time, did it hop or did it walk, is currently open. 10 years of settled answer, unsettled. Now be prey. Because there is something in this landscape built specifically to eat animals your size. And until 2007, nobody could say how big it actually was. A marsupial lion. That year, an almost complete skeleton came out of a cave under the Nullarbor, and the shape of Australia's specialist carnivore stopped being inference. The evidence that it went after the giants isn't a guess either. There's a Diprotodon forelimb bone from New South Wales, carrying deep blade-like tooth marks that match its dentition. Its teeth were found at the same site. So the largest marsupial that ever lived was, on at least one recorded occasion, food. Which, by the standards of this continent, barely registers as a surprise. Elsewhere, at the same time, there's a snake between 5 and 6 meters long that isn't a python and isn't related to Australia's pythons at all. An old Gondwanan lineage on its last legs. No venom. It kills by constriction, and its head is small, which caps what it can physically swallow. And there's a monitor lizard, the largest land lizard science has ever named, hunting the same country. You'd think, of all of them, that one would be best understood. There's never been a complete skeleton. Never an intact skull. Vertebrae and loose teeth, mostly. Length estimates run from around 3.5 meters to over 5, with some pushing towards 7. The mass figures are scattered so wide they're not worth repeating. The biggest terrestrial lizard in the history of the planet, and the record stops at fragments. Field note, this fauna has a habit of arriving wearing the wrong name. The largest land turtle of the southern hemisphere, horned skull, armored tail, horns too wide to retract, was described in 1886 as a lizard, a relative of Megalania. More fossils later established it was a turtle. Queensland material got the same treatment. The marsupial tapir with the fixed elbow was first described as a giant kangaroo because its molars carried 2 transverse ridges, and so do a kangaroo's. And there's a sampling problem underneath all of it. Most of what we have comes from caves that worked as pitfall traps. That doesn't give us the ecosystem. It gives us whatever fell in a hole. So, what killed them? Roughly 88 large vertebrate species disappear from this landmass across the Pleistocene, with something like 54 of those losses falling inside the last 400,000 years. Most of the work puts the collapse somewhere between 50 and 40,000 years ago. The figure quoted most often is around 46,000. People reached this continent somewhere around 50 to 47,000 years ago. The overlap is real. What it means is not. Position 1. A sediment core drilled off the southwest coast holds a continuous record, including the spores of a fungus that lives in the dung of plant-eating mammals. A direct proxy for how much herbivore is walking around up there. The spores are steady for 100,000 years. Then they collapse between about 45 and 43,000 years ago. That is within roughly 4,000 years of people spreading across the continent. And at that exact moment, there is no matching climate signal. Position 2, and it is not a fringe view. Go back through the dated material species by species, the argument runs, and most of these animals are already gone before anyone arrives. On a strict reading, only about 13% can be confidently placed as still present when humans got here. Nothing can be killed by something that turns up after it's already dead. Position 3. Look at it spatially instead. Model where regional extinctions happen and where people first appear, together, across the southeast. And the thing mediating the whole relationship is drinking water. Small mobile human populations need it. So does every large herbivore in a drying landscape. Put them at the same shrinking waterholes and you don't need a hunting hypothesis for it to go badly. Now here's the part that should settle it, and doesn't. People and these animals share this continent for at least 20,000 years. Bone technology is used right across Australia, and direct physical evidence that anyone hunted the megafauna, or used its skin, bone or teeth, is close to non-existent. There's a Diprotodon rib from New South Wales with a small square hole in it, tentatively read as a spear wound made while the bone was still fresh. Tentatively. That's one of the strongest pieces on the table. The strongest piece isn't a hunt at all. It's breakfast. Fragments of enormous eggshell turn up across the country, still working their way out of sand dunes as the wind strips them back. For 40 years, nobody could agree which extinct bird laid them. They tried ancient DNA, and the DNA was already destroyed. The Australian climate had cooked it out. So in 2022, they went after the proteins instead, which survive longer, compared the sequences against a database of living birds, and ruled out the megapode. It was genuineness. And many of those fragments carry burn patterns of a kind only human activity produces. No butchery evidence anywhere. Just eggs, taken from nests and cooked. That should have closed the argument. It didn't. It just moved it. One more body, then I'm done. You're a horned turtle on Lord Howe Island. The mainland kind ran to around 2 meters of shell. Out here you're a good deal smaller. Islands do that. Bony knobs, spikes down the tail, horns too wide to retract. All of it is defense. None of it is against water. The sea just comes up. Best current reading. When the last glaciation ended, rising water took the coastal ground you lived on, and there was nowhere inland to go. That's a hypothesis, not a verdict. But if it holds, you went extinct for reasons nothing to do with people, on an island no human had reached. Today, the largest native land predator here is a dingo. The heaviest native herbivore tops out around 90 kilos. The gap they left is being filled by animals that aren't from here. The continent didn't stop being able to build giants. It just doesn't get the chance now. That's the sim. I'll see you in the next one. Drop the next creature in the comments. The one with the most replies gets dropped into Australia next week. And if you want the animals behind tonight's argument in full, the lizard, the marsupial lion, the demon duck, they've each got their own episode. Playlists linked.